welcome. And this episode is all about the woven wheel stitch. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to bring our needle up through the end of one of the spokes. This is very important because when you go back through the center, you don't want to be hitting the knot every single time. So just bring it up through the edge. And then another note about your spokes is you want them to be exactly the same length. So try really hard to make sure when you're transferring the pattern that they're exactly as long as they should be, and that when you're making your spokes, one isn't shorter than it should be or longer than it should be, etc., because you will notice it at the end. There are ways to cover it up if one is like much longer, but sometimes if it's too long, then your woven wheel is going to look really lopsided. So just make sure everything is really even as we work. So once we have completed this, what we're going to do is we're going to weave the thread through these spokes on the front side. So this is the only sewing part that we're going to do of it, and then everything else is going to be on the front of the fabric until the end. So once you've finished up your last spoke, what you're going to do is you're going to bring your needle up through in between one of the two spokes at the base. It doesn't really matter which one. And then what you're going to do is you're going to skip the first one but go under the second one, and then you're going to skip over one and go under the next one, and then you're going to skip one and go under the next one, and you're going to continue that pattern, just making sure that every time you go under one you went over it last time. And this is why it's really important that you have an odd amount of spokes. And what you're going to do is you're going to gently pull your thread, and you're going to keep it really flat as you pull. So you're not going to want to pull up, you're going to want to pull through, keeping it even with the hoop. This is going to make sure that you are building your flower out and not up. Honestly, the more practice you get with it, the better you will look. Another little note about as you're working through your woven wheel is just make sure that you're being really careful, because if I accidentally pull one of those little threads, sometimes I feel like it messes up my woven wheel. So just being really careful as you do this, really taking your time, being thoughtful about going over one, under one, where your needle is, how hard you're pulling through, that kind of stuff. And if you need to adjust along the way, that's totally fine. Just make sure you're pulling parallel with the thread and the hoop, and then that way you're building out, not up, and so forth. I'm going to let you watch through this sped up, and then we're going to meet towards the end of it, and we're going to go over some final steps to making sure that your woven wheel looks really nice. So now we're approaching the end of the woven wheel, and most of my spokes are covered up. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a couple petals. So all I'm doing is bringing my needle through, and then I'm bringing it up again just slightly outside of it, and I'm bringing it back down. And this is just going to kind of create an outline that's going to cover up some of the spokes. This is the technique you're going to use if your spoke was a little too long. You can cover it up this way. And then I have all that extra thread, so I'm just going to go into the next woven wheel that's using the same color. And this time I'm going to have a circle of French knots in the center. And so what I'm doing is I'm just following the lines, and then I'm leaving room in the center for those French knots. We're going to do the French knots at the end. You can do it however you would like. If you would like to do the French knots first, that's totally fine. If you would like to do them after, totally a-okay. As the case with most embroidery things, you can do it in whatever order you would like. Just making sure that when you do things, that you're just really careful, but ultimately the more experience you get, the better intuition you will get about when to do things and so forth. The steps following this are pretty much the same, so I'm just going to speed this up and let you watch it, and then that way you should have all the information you need to complete this yourself.